A very good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for attending this session, my session over here at the TechDays. I know there's a lot of other talks right now going on, and you decided to come here. It feels really good, so thank you a lot for that. Also, I know this is the second day of TechDays. It's running a little bit late already, so I can imagine that you are getting tired, a little bit fatigued or anything like that. So I'm trying to deliver a great presentation for you guys to get inspired. That's my tagline over here. I'm an inspirational speaker. And for you guys to leave the room and maybe with some new thoughts and new ideas, taking it one step further and just telling everybody what you saw here today during this session. So a little bit about this session. It's called Weaving Cognitive and Azure Services. Initially, when I wrote the RFP for TechDays, I had a lot more, but there was too much in Azure, like the Cosmos DB and a lot of other things that I wanted to integrate into this session. That's why it's called more Azure services, but it was too big, so I trimmed it down to more like the bot framework and everything with cognitive services behind that. So I hope that's why you understand why this session might be a little bit, the title might be confusing. The text underneath it was correct. So a little bit about myself. My name is Marco Kuiper, and my tagline is @Marcofolio. I thought instead of introducing myself, I'll let my bot do that for me. So this is vocalist. You just saw him already. That's the one that's doing the handman game. And vocalist is actually here to help me out for my presentation. So let's switch back to Slack again. And that's where we see vocalist, and it will help me introduce myself so you'll get to know me. So I'll just say, hi, I'm Marco. Hi Marco, nice to meet you. My name is Vocalist and I can help you with your presentation. But first, tell me more about you. So I'll just start off with something about my work, just to give you a little bit of a background about who I am, where I work. So Vocalist is asking me, what company do you work for? And I'll tell, well, I'm working for Info Support. And at that moment, Vocalist will check out information about Info Support. Info Support is an IT company based in Veenendaal, the Netherlands. And also, you see the text, I've been told you're a manager, but you prefer yourself to be called a code monkey. Yeah, that's correct. Within Info Support, I have the function of a manager, but I don't wear like fancy snappy suits or anything, so I don't call myself a manager. I just like to dig in code. That's why I prefer to have the function of the function of a code monkey. Okay, what else do I like to share? Let's take a picture of me, shall we? And then Vocalist will ask me, I just need a selfie to show you how you look. Well, selfie taking with the laptop is possible, but I can also just use the Slack app for that. So over here, I'm just gonna take a picture of myself. Give me just a second because this is an older iPhone 6 model. And let's see if this works. Use photo. Okay, don't be alarmed. Probably a big picture of me will now pop up on the screen. There we go. Let me take a good look at you, Vocalist says. There's one good-looking male. Yes, I'm a male. I'm guessing you're around 38 years of age. Well, that is not true. Wow, I'm like 28, so I feel offended. Bad Vocalist. No, but it's interesting to see that Vocalist has the opportunity, or it can actually detect faces, so it actually recognizes me as a male, and it tried to guess my age. I know I didn't sleep well last night, so maybe that's one of the reasons my age went up, but yeah, it's not that good. So that's a little bit about me. So I'll just quit the one in Vocalist, and I'll just switch back to the presentation slide. Initially, I thought I could also like do the full presentation just in the bot framework, and I could just sit in the audience, drink a cup of tea or anything, and just let the bots do all the talking. But I figured you might not like that as much. So for now, I'll just keep on talking. Later on, we'll grab back to Vocalist, and let's see how it goes. Oh, for those of you who are wondering why is it called Vocalist, a Vocalist is actually a Latin term for one of the muscles in your throat that makes noise. So actually your voice, and that's why I called it Vocalist. Let's see. Like I said before, this presentation is about the bot framework. The tagline for a bot framework, is build a great conversationalist. So it's about bots talking to each other. In other terms, chatbots. Those chatbots can really help us out. with future applications. But let's take a step back and go to the brief history of chatbots. And there we see that in 1966, the first chatbot already emerged. It's called Eliza, and Eliza was the first chatbot, or actually the first interaction, the first computer program that managed to pass the Turing test. So that's the first application where a human could not distinguish the difference between a computer and a real human. So it might be interesting for you guys just to look up the history of Eliza. There's also a website that just does what Eliza does back then. But what it does is that you can actually say that you have a headache. It's like a doctor. So you say you have a headache, and Eliza responds from, okay, take some pills, and then you say yes or no, and then it's a real basic conversation, not that hard. But it's really interesting to see that back in those days already, the history of chatbots already started. Okay, fast forward to the last years. That's where in 2010 Siri was introduced into iOS. That was really something pretty new. It wasn't that good back then, but the concept of a person talking to a device and getting actual information back was really innovative back then. And that's what you see with Google now in 2012, in 2015, Alexa and Cortana, and right now I think Alexa is one of the most used, while Siri is a lot of used in the United States. And yeah, we're now at the most right part of this image, and there we see in 2016 the upcoming stages of messenger chatbots. For example, when you add some friends on Facebook, they have a lot of, not really friends, but companies added to Facebook, they have a lot of chatbots behind those pages. So you can just interact with them through Facebook, making sure that you can access the data that is behind that. For example, one of the biggest companies in the Netherlands is KLM. You can even book your flight tickets through their Facebook Messenger bot. So that's one of the examples that you can use in order to think about chatbots and how you can use them. But why? Why, if the chatbots have been existing for so long, why is now the time to build your chatbot? There's a lot of good reasons for that right now. So one of them is the ubiquity of communication channels. It actually means like it's easy, where a couple of years ago people would install a lot of applications on their phone. The trend is now that you see a lot of people removing specific kind of applications that they don't need or just have one purpose. So it's easier to have that same knowledge, place it into Facebook Messenger, because most of the people already have Facebook Messenger installed, and you still get your same message across. So the same as for the app boom is slowing. Obviously, with the app stores and everything, there was a real hype, and still a lot of apps are being built these days. But you see a slow tendency slowing down because people don't want a lot of apps on their device. They just want the information, and how it gets there doesn't really matter. So if you would integrate your knowledge, what you would usually do in your app, but inside of Siri or inside of another chatbot, it would be just as easy for all the users. And the left part is just as important. Tools and services make powerful bots. The technology that we can use today to make really good bot applications is really easy. And that's what bot frameworks comes in. So it's really a logical time to start your application, start your next application using chatbots. So what are bots actually? On the left side we have a couple of humans. And bots are apps with a new interface that provide more natural interactions. While the phone has applications where you could press buttons and anything, when I'm talking to a friend, I don't press his or her buttons. That would be kind of weird. So I would just talk to them in a natural way. And that's actually how chatbots communicate with humans. So, for example, you have the communication channel like Slack that I was showing you, Facebook Messenger or Cortana, even with speech. That's what a bot does. It has a certain connector, and behind that connector are the bots that gather all the data and provide it to the end user. That's it. So a chatbot is nothing more than just an interface where users can access the data that you would normally give through an application or a website or anything like that. So let's go to the bot framework. So this is a high-level architectural overview of the bot framework, which I'm not going to bore you a lot, but I'm just going to highlight a couple of things within that framework that are really important for you to understand. So the easiest part is the activities within, also known as the conversation with the end user. So the Slack conversation that I just showed you is actually something like this. It's just a tree going back and forth, giving answers, requesting information, going back and forth of information with the bot. That's what the end user will see, but behind there, there's a lot of technology that we can use. So on the left side, we see the bot builder, and that's where your custom bot code actually lives. That's the code where I write my dialogues, where I write my screens and everything like that. And that's what I'll show you an example of later. And that's being hosted right now in Azure. You can also do it in Node. I'll do my examples in C#. But for those of you that prefer JavaScript, you can also just do the bot framework with Node.js. And on the top, we see the cognitive services. Those are not really required, but especially Lewis, and I'll get to that later, especially Lewis is really good when used in combination with the bot framework, especially since Lewis provides more natural language processing, which is really essential when it comes to the bot framework. Lewis can help us a lot. But there are lots of other cognitive services we can use as well. For example, the face recognition API that I used before to recognize my face. And to get everything working together, we have a so-called bot connector with different channels. The bot connector can be found at dev.botframework.com. So I think that if you go to botframework.com, you already go to the dev.botframework.com, my website. And what it does for you is actually make all the plumbing work between your custom bot code that's running somewhere and all the channels that you are supporting, for example, Skype or Slack or Telegram. So that's all the architectural plumbing that we need to have in order to get the bot framework up and running. The most important part for us is actually the left side, the bot builder, because that's where our custom codes live. Yeah, and then you're thinking like, okay, Marco, that's a great story, but I've never built a bot. How should I help the user guide through the application? Well, it isn't that hard. The thing is that when you build a traditional page or a traditional application, you have a so-called page-driven design. For example, you have one page, you press on search, and it goes to the next page, and you select some value, you press on that one. So it's like really page-driven, like one page, second page, third page. But a bot is dialogue-driven, which can almost be directly mapped on the pages. So instead of like having a search page within your application that you would normally build, you can have like a search dialogue within the flow. So you can ask the bot, can you search this and that for me? Or can you provide this and that for me? Which you would normally do on a specific page. For example, when you have like a shopping cart, add this to the basket and check out. There's like 2 pages when designing a website or anything like that. And while doing the conversation, it's almost the same. Just add it to shopping cart and check out. So it's not that hard to have your current knowledge mapped onto the way a conversation flow goes. So just go with the flow. One of the things that you need to remember, though, is that you're working with dialogue stacks. It is not that easy, and that's what makes the bot framework or chatbots in general really hard as well, to jump from one conversation to another. Where when there are humans interacting to each other, we can just talk and talk about one subject and then jump to another subject and jump back to the first subject again. That's something that's really hard for chatbots. So in this example, I'll show the dialogue stack of a cinema bot. Think about when you come to a cinema, there's like this Pepper robot or anything talking to you, and it says, "Welcome to the cinema, can I help you?" And then you can say to him, "I want to watch a movie." The bot will say, "Which movie, at what time, and please confirm." That's one kind of stack with different dialogues within it. So I'll say which movie, The Avengers, at what time, at 7, please confirm. Okay, that's it. You have your tickets booked, right? That's not that hard. But what if you would like to say, "I want to order food." What food? Popcorn. What flavor? Yeah, I like the salt one. Confirm. So this is really a simple one. And tell me more about the movie. Tell me more about Pirates of the Caribbean. This is simple and manageable, but the problem occurs when you would say, "I would like to watch a movie, Transformers at what time. Oh, can I have some popcorn with that as well?" That's something where you have to jump between the different dialogue stacks, and that's really something that is hard. It is manageable, but you have some tips and tricks just to either ask the user to continue walking through the dialogue stack, or saying, hey, I'm sorry, I see that you want the popcorn, but you didn't book your ticket yet. Are you sure that you want to leave this conversation part? It doesn't, those are the things that makes it really hard to make it feel like a human, because a human doesn't do that. But for a bot, that's really some of the things that are hard to do. But you can guide the user. And for that, we can use the Prom Types. The Prom Types are actually types that we can ask the user for a specific kind of input text, or input value, or guide them through the navigation stacks that we had. So you can ask them for a certain piece of text, confirmation, like the yes, no, do you want to play again question. And the bottom two are actually very interesting. The choice element allows you to make only a choice between several options. For example, when the bot vocalist was asking what kind of things that I liked, or what do I like to tell about myself, I only had a couple of buttons that I can use in order to guide the bot. I could also do the natural language processing, but there's like a lot of things that I can tell about myself, but you don't want that much of a granularity within the bot. So that's where you can use the choice element. The attachment prompt type is actually to ask the user for an attachment when it comes to like a picture or a movie. So you can also just process your movie through the bot framework. Okay, I'll just show you my first bot, which is nothing more than a simple explanation of what the bot framework is doing when you start a solution. So right now I'm in Windows. I'll just start Visual Studio. While that is starting up, I'll also show you this one. It's called the Bot Framework Emulator. Oh, there we go. In the meantime, I'll just start this up as well. And the Bot Framework Emulator, as the name recalls, you can emulate the bot. So you can just test your bot locally, making sure that it works before you deploy it to the cloud. I'll get back to this later. Okay, so over here I've got Visual Studio 2017. I'll just start a new project. And I have here the bot application plugin already installed. You can get this bot application from the Microsoft website together with the emulator, and we'll just use this one just as a simple explanation on what the bot framework will be doing. So I'll just put it on my desktop and I say, hello world TechDays. There we go. And what we'll be now creating is a web API, just a classic normal web API solution with a couple of hooks that will be used by the bot framework. So I'll just show you how and why things will work out. So as you can see here, since it's web API, we have controllers and we have dialogues, but I'll dive into that later. But one of the things that I want to show you is that over here, the messages controller, we have, I'll just build a solution. There we go. We have several things that we can use within the bot framework for the bot to be more active. For example, one of the cooler parts below here is that conversation states can be handled here as well. For example, when the user deletes a message, or when a conversation is being updated, when the user is typing and you see that the user stopped typing, you can also react to that with the bot saying, hey, I saw that you wanted to type something. Are you still okay? Is there something going on? That's the kind of stuff that you want to handle inside of your messages controller. But yeah, that's the thing that you should know, and that's where we see the web API. But the most important thing is that we're using dialogues over here. So we'll dive into the root dialogue, the start of your conversation with the user. So the start of the trees that are like an actual conversation. And this is a method that's being called when the user actually sends a message to the bot. And right now, as you can see over here, it actually calculates the length from the message, and it lets it reply to the user, you sent that kind of text which was that many characters long. Not really spectacular, but just to make sure everything is working, I'll just start this one. We'll wait for it to spin up. In the meantime, I'll just add a breakpoint so you'll be sure that it's actually that point that we're hitting. If everything is, there we go. So this is the index, the default HTML file. You can just change it to whatever you like. And I'll just have to copy this message, this URL, because that's the location where the bot framework currently is running. And we'll head back to the bot framework channel emulator. This is where I can enter my endpoint URL and add it with API/messages. It's still web API, so that's why you have the API part and the messages with the controller. So that's the point that we need to connect with. So let's start. On the bottom, you'll see some conversation information. And right now, it should be connected with our bot. So what I'll say here now is, hello, TechDays from info support. Let's go. There we have it. The breakpoint is being hit right now. I'll just remove that one for now. Let it continue. And at the bottom, you see the bot replying. You sent hello TechDays from info support, which was 31 characters. I didn't count, but I trust it's 31. So right now, I have like a conversation going back and forth, not really doing anything spectacular, just starting the conversation with the bot. And I can do like another word or whatever. So that's 5 characters, that's correct. One of the things that I want to give you is that whenever you use the channel emulator, you can click on a message, and on the right side, you'll see a couple of details, like the text, the type, from, but also, and those are the interesting parts, the channel data and the ID. That's the kind of information the chatbot framework, the bot framework stores in order to make sure that the conversation is still going correctly. And not that when another user is starting a conversation with the bot as well, things will get mixed up. It doesn't need that, so that's why you have all this metadata. And especially when doing things like the prompt types, where you have choice elements, all the metadata will be used here as well, so that all the other tools that are consuming the bot, like Slack and everything, can parse that in their own way. So the metadata is really useful if you're really debugging and looking into stuff. Usually you wouldn't look at these details, but just know that they are there. So that's about it for the start for the bot framework. I'll just quit this one. And let's go back to the slides. Okay, now, well, we got our first bot. It said hello world, or a little bit longer than hello world, but just by downloading the bot framework emulator and the bot framework template, you can just start your own bot without having a lot of knowledge needed. Just start it up, just a template, and there we go, that's the first bot that we have. But next up is a little bit of artificial intelligence, especially diving into Lewis, a little bit about the cognitive services. So why would we want to add artificial intelligence or cognitive services to our solution? There's a lot of good reasons for that. The first and most important one, it's more natural. And that's also combined with the second one, it feels more personal. Especially when you know that you're talking to a bot that feels a little bit weird. You want the conversation to feel natural, as if you were talking to another person that is maybe in a virtual world, but it has to feel like it's a natural one. So you don't want to when you're talking to it, you don't want to specify all the lines that you would say to greet a person, or specify when mistakes were made when in the spelling check or anything like that. You just want a natural conversation, which will help us with the bot framework, or the cognitive services with the bot framework. A little bit about the cognitive services. So the cognitive services is a way for us as developers to have like a little bit of AI power at our fingertips. Like I said, I'm a developer. I'm not like an AI guru or a data scientist. I know nothing about Azure Data Lakes or R or anything like that kind of stuff. But still, the cognitive services for us as a developer is a really easy way to have access to the power of machine learning. And the cognitive services is actually divided into 5 pillars. The first one is vision, tells us a little bit about pictures and what the eye can see. The second one is speech, that's one of the parts there where Lewis comes in. Language, about translations and spell correction. Search, for the Bing search APIs, and the knowledge APIs for extensive searching through the knowledge database of Microsoft. But like I said, I want to dive a little bit into Lewis, because in my opinion, without Lewis, the chatbot framework, the bot framework isn't that spectacular, because every word that you type has to be exactly correct when it comes to the bot framework. But Lewis helps in such a way that you can make more natural languages. And it works with so-called utterances. So an utterance is like a sentence that you and I would normally say in order to get something done. For example, I want to eat food, I want to eat, I'm hungry. All those things have actually the same goal, and that's called an intent. I want to order food. So I can train Lewis to understand all those sentences that I would normally use in a conversation, and for the bot to order some food with that. There's a special kind of intent, and those are the intents with entities. And that's where you have like the type of food already embedded inside of your sentence, in your utterance. So let's say, let's order some pizza or anything like that. The intent stays the same. I mean, I still want to order food, but the pizza is like a variable that I can use. And that's called an entity. So Lewis already extracts the kind of intent that we're trying to achieve, and it also extracts the kind of things that I want, so the type of food, and it actually passes this on to the bot framework. I don't have to think about all those combinations for let's order this and then that, and typing that out and doing everything like that. That's the kind of stuff that Lewis takes care of. I'll just demo it later, and hopefully that will be more clear. One of the things that I'm using as well in this bot is the Face API. And with the Face API, it's really easy to recognize emotion. So over here I have a picture of, I think 16, of the same lady, but she is trying to display different kind of emotions. I circled one, making sure that you'll focus on that one. And when I pass that through the Face API, I get a lot of data. And the one that I circled is where you see how much anger, contempt, and disgust and everything is being recognized in that picture. But as you can see, the happiness factor is really high. So it's 81% sure that that person on that picture is happy. But also for 18%, it's surprised. And when I look at the picture, I'm pretty sure it's a happy one. I'm not really sure that it's surprised, or I would call it surprised. But she is definitely not anger. She doesn't have any sadness in that picture. So, and that's what the Face API also recognizes for us. So it helps in order to recognize when I take a picture, to determine if the person that is using that bot, if it's feeling happy or sad or anything like that. Okay, who can tell me what's on this building? I spoiled it. What's on this picture? A building. Oh, no surprise. Next one. But what else is on this picture? A cars, parking, yeah, sign, trees. Oh, that's good. That's good. Yeah, you're close. You're really good, guys. This is actually a picture of the info support headquarters in Veenendaal. And when I pass this through the custom vision API, this is what it will return. A row of parked cars on a city street with a confidence of 72%. Yeah. It's close. I mean, it's not wrong. It's still a row of parked cars on a city street. And the confidence is not that high, but I would also expect those things like a building and trees and everything. But still, the computer vision API is still learning. It's improving every day, but I would also hope that more details will be available later. But still, those tags that are being returned, like that is outdoor, the sky, that's correct, the road is correct, the car is correct. But that's where the confidence is also really, really high. So that's where the computer vision API is being used for, and that we can use to do all the kind of stuff that we like. Okay, let's go back into the bot vocalist. And for that, I'll just show you a couple of things. And the first one being Lewis. So I'll just refresh this page. So Lewis, when you visit the URL lewis.ai, you'll have the opportunity to see what Lewis can do for you. And this is the Lewis bot that we're using right now for Vocalis. So over here we see a couple of endpoint hits, because obviously I've been testing the last couple of days, everything's still working. I just hit it during the beginning of my presentation. So this is just an overview of intents that are being recognized and entities that are being recognized as well. And like I said, let's go into the intents. So these are the intents that the Vocalis can recognize. First one being the crowd insights that we can use to check how the crowd is doing. A little bit the introduction, that's where I started my conversation. Play a game and send a picture, where we can ask Vocalis to send us a picture about something. So let us go into the introduce one, because that's the one that I tried earlier. That's where I showed, hello, I'm Marco. And here you can see that I trained Lewis with a couple of utterances. Hey, I'm variable name, or hi, I'm another variable name. My name is, or just hi and hello. If you paid attention, I think I started my conversation with Vocalis with hello, I'm Marco. That's not something that I've already written down right here. But still, Lewis was able to recognize, okay, I still can break it down, and I understand that your intent was to introduce yourself, and I still understand that Marco is the name, so I'll just go along with this one. I don't have to programmatically break down everything in order to get it into Lewis, and that's really powerful, because I cannot, kids these days have like different sayings like, yo, my name is Marco. Probably, I hope, I think, and maybe that Lewis will be trained on that one as well, since it will recognize this as one as an introduction. It's not something that I specifically wrote down here. So what we see here is a different kind of introductions that we can do. When we, let's just do that. So when I have the introduction and just say, yo, I'm Marco. So let's make it specific right now. So I'm Marco. It's already recognizes the name part as in, okay, I think I've seen Marco before. So I think you're especially saying that you want a name. Okay, that's good. So I'll just save this one. And let's go to train and test. So this is an interactive way to train with the Lewis API and making sure that the things that you wanted, all the sentences that you have in the system, are being processed correctly. So I'll just say, hello, I'm Marco. And it recognizes it as hello, I'm name. It parses it. You can see it here that the introduce one is at 98%. That's really high, so that's good. And what if I would say hi, it would still probably do the introduce one, but it couldn't find any variable that's being used as in the name. And I could also do like yo, my name is Marco. Okay, this might break. I don't know. Introduce. Oh, still it works. Woo, magic. So yo, my name is Marco. Yeah, question? Yes. It actually, since last March, Lewis was added, or the Dutch was added to Lewis as a language. I have to admit that the English one obviously is better. It has just a lot of learning time. It had a lot more learning time than the Dutch one. But when you're creating a new Lewis model, it can actually be in Dutch. So that's pretty powerful indeed. Like I said, I never wrote anything with specific, yo, my name is Marco. And that's why you also see that the introduce, the scoring of the introduction is lower. It's 89%, still good, but not really that good as the first one that you saw before, but still good enough. So what I'm going to do now is I can publish the application. And when I hit publish, that's when the Lewis model that's being connected to the Vocalis bot will be published. And right now, when I do go back to Lewis, I can say, yo, my name is Marco. It should recognize this one because it's, hey, hello Marco, nice to meet you, and it would start the conversation flow again. I'll just leave it at that. But that's the kind of stuff that we can do with Lewis. It actually makes natural language processing a lot easier. What I wanted to show you as well is the code of Vocalis. So let's start up Visual Studio. In the meantime, I'll show you the other one, the picture, where we'll ask Vocalis to send us a picture. The intent that's behind that in Lewis is show me how. What do you want to see? What do you want? A cow? Cow looks like. Sure, give me a second. Oh, I actually made a spelling mistake because there's show how a cow looks like. I know the intent is show me how a cow looks like, but it recognizes the word cow within the middle of a sentence, and it extracted it, and that's how you can make this picture. Underneath the hood, the cognitive services have been working, and that's where it's calling the Bing Search API, the Bing the Images API, making sure that we see this picture of a very, very cute cow. I hope you liked what I showed you. Anything else you need? You can just use Vocalis as a random image searcher for, hey, tell me how that looks like. So that's a lot of fun. Oh, yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. That's a very good point. Chaining the cognitive services would be awesome as well. So you can pass along that image of the cow to cognitive services, determine if a face is being recognized, and if so, how happy it is. Very interesting. No, sadly it doesn't. Because the problem is that faces aren't recognized. But maybe when you have like something like a chimpanzee, I haven't tried it, but you might. What might be interesting is that when you try it in a chimpanzee, will it recognize the gender or age? I don't know, we'll see. You can just try it. I mean, everything can be used very easily. So when coming back to Vocalis, I told you guys before about the controller, still one messages controller, not really spectacular going on over there. But over here we have the certain kind of dialogues, and those are the things that you start when you hit the dialogue stack. Like I said before, we have the root dialogue, but now this root dialogue has a new attribute added called a Lewis model. That's the plumbing that we need in order to get the Lewis that we have on the website working within our bot application. And when we have those secrets that you cannot see here because those are like super secret, filled in inside of your applications, we can do stuff like this. So we just say, okay, whenever Lewis thinks that you're trying to do the Lewis intent introduce, the one that I specified on the Lewis model website, we can just start your dialogue over here. And it doesn't matter how we get here, as long as Lewis thinks that the user is trying to introduce himself, this method will start. And in this line, we see try to find the entity, the name. We're trying to find the name part that we're trying to introduce with on the start. So when I said, hello, my name is Marco, the name will be extracted with Marco. So this variable will be filled with my name. But that's something interesting, because one of the things that I didn't show you is what will happen if I didn't say, hi, I'm Marco, but just hi. And that's where this piece of code will help you with. And let's just do it. I'll just say hi. I don't know. Hi, could you tell me your name? Okay. I'll just say Marco. And now it recognizes me as Marco, and it continues the conversation flow. So that's one of the things that you should keep in mind as well, that over here I'm using the prompt dialog whenever the name is unknown, and we'll ask the user for the name, and then we'll resume after the name clarification has been completed. So if the name is already known, we'll just continue. If we don't know the name, we'll ask the user for the name, and then we'll continue our conversation. And with that, we jump to another part of the application. So whenever I have the root dialog and I know the name, we start the introduction dialog, and that's a different one. So this is a different dialog, with the constructor with the same name, so we can use that within the context of this dialogue. And this is where we'll start asking the options like, okay, what are your hobbies? Can you send a picture of yourself? What do you do for work? That's that's part of the dialogue stack you're now in. And now you probably understand why it's really hard to jump from this part of the conversation, from your introduction dialogue, to play a game dialogue, because that's a different class. It's really hard to jump from one to another. So that's the kind of stuff that I wanted to quickly show you. Like I said, the real powerful parts are these kind of things, the Lewis intents on top of your methods in the root dialogue. And within that, you'll just jump to the other dialogues from the other conversations. Over here, not really that interesting, but might be worth looking at. I have the cognitive services. So the Bing image, the one that displays the cow, was working there. Computer vision and the face API is over there as well. So we can use those services over there. Yeah, that's what one of the those are the details that I wanted to show you about Vocalis. Well, let's get back to the slides. Well, with only 4 minutes left, I would like to close this presentation. And I think this is really awesome. Although the premise is really good, so I really believe that in a couple of years, the chatbots will help us. Right now, it's still not there yet. The same for the cognitive services. They need to train, they need to learn, they need to get better at everything, and that's when they really will start helping us. But for some basic Q&Aing or basic information, that's where really the bot servers can really help. So you don't need like a full agency where people are just answering basic questions of users. We just have a bot for that. A couple of things to remember: don't over AI stuff. You can program everything and try to make all those kinds of things inside of Lewis. You will never get all the combinations of all your users right there. Just learn, keep on improving. Guide the user using the prompt dialogues. Use cards. One subject I can do a total other presentation about is that you can use cards in order to display information in a proper way to the end user. So the cow picture with the subtitle, like the info support logo and the subtitle, that's a type of card, but you can also define your own cards. Think about update scenarios. Update scenarios can be really interesting. I mean, for example, when I started your conversation and in the middle of a conversation, what will happen when some geeky continuous delivery deployment dev deploys a new version of the web API? You're in the middle of a conversation state. What will happen? Those are the things that you really need to keep in mind, because normally when you don't DM much, things will get lost. You can also test it, which is not a bad thing, or actually a real good thing to do, but it's harder, because there's Lewis fragments, you have conversation flow, you can test it, it's interesting, and it's really still a good thing to do, but it's hard. About cognitive services, keep on training those things, try to combine those, like you said, and remember those cognitive services are not bot only. Earlier today I had a presentation about cognitive services in combination with apps, so you can use the cognitive services everywhere. About the bot framework, think about stuff like bot framework, because bots aren't perfect. One of the things that I wrote on my blog was where you can recognize the emotion of the user entering any text. And when, for example, it's angry, you'll say, okay, I see that you're angry. Would you like to talk to a real agent, to a person that's behind a screen that can help you out? Yeah, the Visual Studio bot template, that's the template for Visual Studio that you can use in order to make everything work. About the cognitive services, one of the things that's really interesting is that you can export and import the Lewis model. We need that in order to have your continuous workflow going, making sure that you have your Lewis model inside your TFS or VSTS environment, and that you can make it even better. And I know AI is always like a vague subject or a vague topic. If you really need to get started on AI, my colleagues have a real cool way to do that. You can just go to their workshop or go to the website ai-experiments.io. And it will help you get AI landed at your either customer or at your work, making sure that all the creative sparks around AI are being used right there. And with that, I would like to thank you. My bot, vocalist, is actually on GitHub. You can just look him up over there. And you can also ask me questions after the session or just visit me at the InfoSport stand.